that you can get away with not going or following the very strict routine of doing it this way every single time, because at some point you miss out on the next best thing.
There was a clip from Ghazi, who owns Empire Records. We went over him last week, and there was this clip that I was dying to have on. We just couldn't find a rhythm for it. Right now, we still don't find a rhythm for it, but I need to get it on the podcast to talk about it. And it talks about regimen versus creative freedom, right? And what is needed, what is not. I'm a creator. Moose is more of the structured businessman. So it should be a good conversation. Let's hear what he has to say.
Wrong with a conventional life. It's just not for me. I don't want to do the same thing every day. The regimen is what gave me the backbone for success. But the regimen would have suffocated my success if I lived under the veil of regimen. So it was a good backbone to propel me forward. But at some point, I wanted to live with a level of spontaneous creativity that I could just do whatever I want when I want to do it.
Talk about it. Moose, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't ignore the fact that he says the fundamentals or the regimen is what got him, to where he is. And I agree with that. I do believe that it's kind of the quintessential quote or cliche saying of what got you here won't get you there. So I do understand that, where in the beginning you have to discipline yourself and follow a routine and not just do things whenever you feel like it, simply because you're just not that good enough. You're not that good yet. You have to work through the kinks of getting started and mastering something. But eventually you do get to a point in your craft or in your field, in your niche, where you really rise above the tide. You stand out for having put so much time and effort into it all, that you can get away with not going or following the very strict routine of doing it this way every single time, because at some point you miss out on the next best thing when you're too rigid to your routine. So I've experienced this relatively closely, or similar to what he said. So I do understand what he's saying. And I think for those of you listening, you really just got to decide, have I mastered my craft yet? Have I mastered the thing that I want to be known for? Or am I still in the infancy stage of really trying to get this thing down packed? Because if you haven't, then routine is the path that you need to follow. I hate to say it, but you need to get your 10,000 hours in. You need to put your time in the gym to really develop that discipline muscle to be able to master a craft at the most fundamental way. And then beyond that, if you have mastered and you're on the other side, you might want to start dabbling around with something a little bit different, because the next best thing could literally be just on the other end of that routine. And you've been following it for so long that things start to lose their flavor or their color. Everything just kind of feels the same way because you've done it the same way for so long. So I can see both sides of it, but I do think it's a timing thing depending on where you are in your experience and even in your career.
Do you think that, because you said mastering your craft, do you think that mastering your craft solely keeps you on the regimen and the schedule and a system? That's the only way you can master your craft?
Yeah, I think there's just a certain discipline. There's a certain amount of time that needs to be dedicated towards something. And this is where I say sometimes learning things through the negative, it's another way to actually master something. You do it so much so that when it doesn't feel right, you know that's not a part of your formula. It's like, wait, I know that this is not right, or I'm unsure if it's right or not, but I know for sure that this part shouldn't be involved. Like it doesn't make sense for, say, credits to be in the middle of the movie. No, this is not right. Something tells me otherwise. So I will say in the beginning, it just takes a while to get those kinks out of your process to start to really finding a feel for maybe the standard way of how it's supposed to be done. and then your way for how you're going to make an imprint on how it's going to be done your way or what you're going to do differently other than the industry standard.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I think I don't know if I could agree with mastering your craft first before the spontaneous things, because I think like part of mastering your craft is finding your own voice to it as well. So for people that we look at that we say has mastered their craft, they also have their own style to it. So what we see is truly their version of their market and their niche. And then we say, yo, they've really mastered that craft. And I'll say, like, for Swiss Beats, when we went over him in the past, where he admitted, yo, I copied exactly the style of past producers until I could figure out my own. I think that's mastering the foundation. I will say that. I think that's mastering the foundation of the craft. But mastering the craft as a whole can be, and this is my opinion, like this could be a mix of what you add to it. What's your sprinkle to it? Now, I am the type that, like, I can't stick to a regimen too long, right? I can be very disciplined to get it started, but to take it to new levels, I can't, like, I have to have a sense of freedom. I have to have a sense of, of control in my own way to allow myself to get to different heights. And sometimes that bites me in the butt. I'm not going to lie, right? So I'm not sitting here saying that's the most perfect way and that's the way to go. It's a trial and error situation when it comes to doing things like that. But I don't want anything to feel like a task. I think in the beginning of, as we are, figuring out what we're trying to do as careers, as, just life purpose, you're going to do things you don't want to do. And it's going to be task after this, tedious, and it's just super routine. And you have to do that. Absolutely. Right? I don't want to do that after a while, to say that I've truly mastered it. That's the beginning levels of things. And I'm just more on what is going to give me a balance. I don't want to get rid of the regimen. I don't want to get rid of it. I want to honor it to a certain point, to then give me wiggle room to see if this works, if I could break this, or if I could break that. If not, I go right back to it and figure out a whole new formula to plug and play my own style while staying true to the foundation. But yeah, I can't only stick to the regimen. That's just boring.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. No, and that's why I said you got to reach that point where you graduate from the routine. It actually hurts you or hinders you when you don't move on from your routine, because you miss out on opportunities to innovate and make something uniquely yours. But in the beginning, yeah, I do favor that routine or that regimen, just because if you think about it, most people, when they start, the one thing that holds them back is that they don't have that very specific thing or the clarity to just pursue one thing with all their might. It's because I just think about it, even in my own career, I was just debating between so many different things. It's like, man, what about fitness? I was an athlete in college and I still have a desire to stay in shape. I remember when I stopped playing sports, I was like, I just don't want to be out of shape. Like I'll just do anything so that I just don't get out of shape. Like I want to stay this version of me for as long as I can. So I was like, man, what about something in fitness? And I was like, nope, I'm too shy, too introverted. I will probably never take pictures without my shirt off. So that won't work. It's like, oh, what about real estate? So you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, I think everybody in the beginning of a career, they're having to pick between so many different things, and they might nibble in some of them, but you don't get that mastery until you commit to one thing and say, you know what? All right, I might need to do something on the side to pay the bills, by all means, but I got to commit to this one thing to master it, you know, at a level that's strong enough for me to make a stamp on it. And then I impose my will or bring in some creativity. So but again, overall, I think what he's saying is spot on. You need it to start. And then once you master it, you need to break it to get better. There's just no way around it. That's the only way I see it.
I like that. I like that.